Hey, good evening everybody. Tonight I'm going to dare to make pizza for you. Now, the reason I say dare is pizza is a very, very personal food. There are many styles. There are people that insist there's only certain ways to make it. I'm not one of those. Personally, I've never been a fan of those thin crust, things you get out of the deep freeze at the store that's got they sprayed the toppings on and they're going on about the thin crust and it's like basically a cracker, right? I am more of the old days pizza where you got like sort of meaty bready crust and lots of stuff on it that would hold it, and that's the kind I'm going to make tonight. All right, so first I'm going to do the dough because that's got to rise for like an hour or two, and I'm going to do like an hour and a half rise for this. I know the correct pizza dough is like basically an overnight ferment and another rest and so on, but I just want to make pizza for supper, and I'm going to show you in case you want to make pizza for supper. So first thing to do is get the dough going, and then we'll talk about the toppings I've got. I got the 3 1/3 cups of flour in the stand mixer with the salt. Just let that go for a little bit. This is the toughest part of the recipe, strangely enough. If you've never worked with yeast-based doughs, if the water is too hot at the beginning, the yeast will die, and if it's too cold, it won't rise. Now, right now it's actually too hot, but what I'm doing is I'm warming up the top, because if you get the water temperature just right to your finger and your cup is ice cold, the temperature will drop and your product will fail. Okay, so turn that down just a little. Yeah, if you're wondering why my hands are in this, it's because you've got to feel the temperature of the water. You can use a thermometer, but nothing beats this. And it feels just nice and a little too warm. That's perfect. Now, there is no precise amount. I put the 3 1/3 cups and 1 cup of water, but depending on the ambient humidity of where you are, you may either need to add a bit more flour or a bit more water by spoonfuls. Add the sugar first, any kind of sugar. Stir that a little bit. Now, for the yeast, I always use the stuff in the jar. Some people might consider 2 teaspoons too much for this, but if you're new to this, and I'm cooking for new people, a little more yeast is a good idea when you're first practicing, because that way you make sure your stuff's going to rise. It may taste a little yeasty, you may like that, you may not. As you get more practice, you can cut back on the amount of yeast. Now, if you are using a package, use most of it, or just toss it all in, leave a little bit, up to you. So now the yeast is going to proof, and what that means, it's sort of a dead or alive thing. I'm going to come back in about 10 minutes or so. Look at that, eh? In 10 minutes, you see all that frothy joy. Now, you don't want to wait too long, or else it's not going to get captured in the dough. Pour all of this in at once. After you've made this a couple of times, it's not strictly necessary to measure, but at the beginning you probably want to. So 2 tablespoons of olive oil. This makes the dough nice and pliable and easy to work with. And the secret ingredient for my dough, an egg. In my research, I found endless discussions on the protein content of the correct flour, and how you use one kind of dough, and then you use one kind of flour and then a higher content. And I thought, well, wait a minute, what's pure protein? It's like, oh, an egg. Okay, well, let me try that. And guess what? It works, right? So just crack an egg in there, and if it's looking kind of behaved, you can crank it up 1 notch. Because see, it still spit a bit of flour out the side. Now, when you hear the sound of the motor changing, just lift it up and let it fall off the dough hook like that. You can help it along a bit with a clean hand. You don't need to get gloves for this part. Okay, this is safe to edge it up here. Now, if that doesn't look like it's cooperating, again, bring up the hook. If you've got some that's just too wet, too dry, just put your hand in there for a minute and manually knead the bottom to get the wet parts pushed into the dry bits. And after you've satisfactorily done that, then you can see whether you're actually going to need to add some more water or not. Because if you add it right now, the dough is just going to get way too wet. But I think it is going to need a bit. So, one more go. Now this part is really interesting. What you do is you put in literally 1 spoon at a time. It didn't take. So, and this I'm just using a soup spoon. It doesn't matter. Well, 2 looks like it's nearly there. I'll put 1 more. And what do you know? It's nearly even a bit wet. So that came right back. Now I turn it up. And let that knead for a few minutes. Once your dough looks like it's going off the hook there, literally, you just take that out. It's nice and smooth. Now, just take the hook off for a minute so you can see this better. I'm just going to leave it there for now. Okay, so you can feel that. It's really smooth. Now, it's a little sticky, and I am going to rise it right in here. So what I'm going to do is pour a little bit of oil right onto my hand. Okay, and pick up the dough and make sure that it's fully covered with oil. This part is really important. And if you need in a little bit more oil, there's no harm there either. Okay, so that's looking nice. So I'll get a piece of plastic wrap and just set that right on top of the dough and put it up under the lights on my stove and let it sit for about an hour or so. Just to get an idea, this is before. Again, time management. The sauce takes the longest for the flavors to develop, so I start that first. And immediately after, I'll chop the mushrooms because I do want them to dry out some. So I got some Italian seasoning here, and I'll put about a tablespoon or so. If you haven't got that, just some oregano and basil is fine, mixed. Then, half a small can of tomato paste. Now I'm transferring this to a glass dish, the remainder. You should never leave tomato paste in the original can. It turns black and it's no good for you. About a tablespoon or so of olive oil. Eyeball about half a can of water. And if you ever wondered why some of the pizzeria sauces had that magical sweet taste, I'll let you in here. I got some organic ketchup. Just put a good squirt of that. Don't overdo it, but like about a tablespoon. And that adds the other flavor accents. With the sugar and the vinegar, and you don't have to measure anything. And I like to use organic, but you don't necessarily have to. If you don't have any ketchup, well, just throw in like a half teaspoon of sugar or something. But not too much. Okay, that's looking nice. I got a fair amount of vegetables on here, so I am not going to put more water into it, because you got to remember, you don't want to wet up your crust. While it may seem appealing to buy sliced mushrooms, they're actually too thick, because this, I'll just show you, is the average slice in a pack of sliced mushrooms. But if you want your pizza to turn out, you would have to slice each one of those in half, which is an incredible amount of work, and you are far better to just do really nice thin slices. Don't chop these up in bits, it doesn't taste the same. I got about a half a pound here, 200 grams or so. Well, just pop the mushrooms back in the container. For pizza, I like small peppers. Now, all I had today was a yellow. I usually prefer green for color balance and whatnot and flavor, but some days you just take what you get. It'll still taste fine, it'll just look a little different. So I just cut the top off and pull all the seeds out to get the rings and just support it. And these for the pizza, it's like the mushrooms. You want these as thin as possible so they evaporate their moisture in the oven. Now I'm going to be doing mine in a normal oven. I do not have a pizza stone, and I'm not expecting you to have one either, and this just works out fine. So I like onion on my pizza. Not everybody does. I mean, like I said at the beginning, pizza is such a personal food. I'm more concerned with how you layer the toppings so it comes out properly. I'll get to that later. If you are going to use onion, same thing. Nice thin rings. So I have nice thin slices of onion here. I won't say paper thin, but they're pretty good. Okay, so just break them up and leave them on the same plate as the peppers. Now I got this block of cheese here. It's 700 grams, which, if you split it in half, is 350. Which, if you go to the store and they sell like what, 10, 12 ounce, 340 gram bags of mozzarella. So 350 is good enough for a pizza. If you cost this out, buying a cheap cheese grater is going to pay for itself if you make pizza on any regular occasion. Because blocks of cheese are significantly cheaper than bags of shredded. After you shred it about half, just kind of lift that up, or you could do it right over the bowl too, and transfer it or however you want. Okay, go again. For the kind of pizza that I'm doing, you want a harder mozzarella. You don't want the fresh soft ones. Those are more for the quick, really high temp ovens with the stove or the broiler. I'm just going to do like a normal bake on this. And this is after. So you can see it worked extremely well. Now I have this old pizza pan that I've had forever and probably will never get rid of. I'm going to cover it in a nice piece of tin foil. I'm just going to do the crust right on the stove here. I use gloves for this bit just because it takes a really long time to wash the oil off my hands, and this is actually more hygienic. So just spread some oil all over the pan. This is very unlikely to stick, but it never hurts to make sure. And it also helps to make the dough just a little softer, which is nice. I'm going to pick it up from the bottom. Try to keep it in one piece. You can kind of move it a little, sort of form it in a bit of a ball. Yeah. And just start to press. I'm assuming you don't have mad skills to toss the crust. If you did, you wouldn't be watching this. From the middle, press evenly because you don't want to create holes in this. At some point it should stay put. If it doesn't, you can always just let it relax for about 5 minutes and repress it out. Now this is looking very thin at this point. You want this to raise back up. So you're going to want this to rise without any sauce, any toppings for about a half an hour. So it's been a little over half an hour. It's looking quite nice there. You can see from the side it's starting to raise up a little bit. So I can put the pizza together now. You know, this usually works better if you just kind of dab it on a little bit. To get it as even as you can, I like to go right up to the edges. Now I take some of the cheese and put it right on the crust. Not too much. You want most of it for the top, just enough to give it a decent covering. Yeah, this is what I found worked for me. When I've got a thin pepperoni like this, I find it works better under the cheese. If I'm using something like a dry salami, it works better on top. This stuff is not that durable when it comes to heat, and the few times I tried it on the top, it just burnt. So once your pepperoni's on, that's when I put on the rest of the cheese. And then the vegetables, I always put the mushrooms on last because they have the highest water content. I mean, these are kind of watery, but they're really thin, so they're not going to impact it that much, the onions. Now, obviously, since it's pizza, you can put on like whatever you want. The key thing to keep in mind is your moisture content. If you make it too wet, you're going to get a soggy crust, simple as that. Nice part about making pizza at home is you can have way more toppings than you're ever going to get at the store. And for a finishing touch, a little bit of grated Parmesan over the top. And if you ever made one of those ones in the boxes, you can put on more Parmesan than you got in that like little envelope, right? Okay, so it's ready to go. Now, I'm not ready to eat quite yet, so it's quite fine to just let it sit on the stove for a while. So I'll just let that chill there. The oven's heating up. And when I do put it in, it's going to be 400 for 20 minutes Fahrenheit. So it's risen a bit more on the pan. I'm going to pop it in at 400 Fahrenheit for 20 minutes. Just pop that out of the oven now. It's been at 400 for 20 minutes. It's cooked just perfect. So let that cool down just for a couple of seconds. So I got that all sliced up, and I'll get a piece on the plate so you can have a good look at the crust. There we go. Yeah, so there's the edge. It's got a good rise on it. It's fairly sturdy, which is the way I like it. Okay, well there's my dinner and some leftovers. That's how I make pizza. Thank you for watching, and hope to see you again.